All right. That's James Hetfield's Seek and Destroy Metallica. I believe that's from 1985, something like that, around there. I've been opening up with that for a few years now. That's more for me than for you, but Metallica has not given me official permission. I use it anyway, and I have sent them one of my Discussions of Truth hats. Folks, Ian Trottier here. I've been doing my podcast now since 2016. I started it in Miami Beach because of the Zika virus and because, well, frankly, the mainstream media is not giving you the truth. Very basic and frank as that. They are meant to divide you politically, and in that division, they will conquer you. And that is the deep state, not the mainstream media. Those that control the mainstream media, otherwise known as the deep state. And democracy has been under attack for many, many decades. It has now reared its very disgusting head as the 2020 election was blatantly taken from the majority of the people in the United States, the land which the United States of America occupies. So, what we have here are some pretty interesting things going on nationally. We have now a former president of the United States jailed. He's out on bond in Fulton County, Georgia. Why? Because there was no crime committed. His crime is and was, and 19 of them, 19 others, or 19 of them total, I'm not sure what it is, but his group of folks, lawyers et al., have supposedly committed a crime according to, was it Fannie Willis, who's a daughter of a Black Panther. Folks, I'm from California, and it just so happens that I was born in Oakland, California. I believe that's where the Black Panthers started. And no, I'm not black. I am a white man, and today I am the enemy, aren't I? I'm the enemy. Well, that is the white man is the enemy. If you listen to some of my previous podcasts, I tell you exactly who my research shows is the deep state. And no, the deep state does not conceive in the United States of America. This is a European entity, otherwise known as, well, if you start with the Knights of Malta, then yes, you'll be heading down the right road. That is the deep state, and they want to destroy all your religious freedoms. They want to destroy your freedom of speech. They want to destroy your freedom of press, and they're doing a really good job of it. So anyway, California here nor there. I'm just drawing a parallel. Fannie Willis and is saying that if you, basically, from my understanding, I haven't read any of the indictments, but if you essentially question the federal election process, which is greatly tainted on a technological era or technological format with many glitches in its systems and various systems. If you question that, you are committing a crime, which is basically what this woman is saying to the American people, and certainly to a former president of the United States who can't go anywhere with outdrawing more than 50,000 people. Yet the guy that's in office right now can hardly even stand up and draw 5 people. Okay, I'm exaggerating a little bit. He gets more than 5 people, but it's pretty blatant who the American people elected in 2020. Okay, so 2 other issues before we call on the guest. One other issue, and the second will be the guest issue. One other issue. I've been watching the U.S. Open here, Flushing Meadow, and I've recently submitted a publication via Your News. Here I'm watching a wonderful battle last night, and it's a German and Italian. And the German freaks out because someone in the crowd is singing a former Weimar Republic national anthem for under Adolf Hitler. And he freaks out. He says it's inappropriate. And so the chair, the chair umpire, the umpire in the chair, disgustingly turns around, demands that person be singled out and taken out of the arena. I've written an article on it. Folks, this is freedom of speech. This man in the stands was not committing any type of crime. He was not making any threat to this person. He simply was able to push the young tennis player's buttons at 26 years old. He wasn't emotionally stable enough to listen to a fan in the stands singing a former anthem for the nation that he represents, and that somehow became offensive to the young tennis player that stands, by the way, 6'6" tall. He's likely well over 5 or 6 inches taller than the man in the stands that was singing the anthem. That's what we've gotten to in this country, ladies and gentlemen. Now, if you went to any public school like I did, you certainly ran around the playground and the kids would say, "Sticks and stones may break your bones, but words can never hurt." Is that still being said on playgrounds in America? It seems that they aren't, and everybody seems to have very thin skin because nothing that comes out of your neighbor's mouth is politically correct. All right, so today's guest, we're going to talk about Jeff Zink. He's running for congressional office out of the state of Arizona. We're going to bring him on right now because he's dealing with something that you need to listen to and you need to be talking about with your friends and acquaintances and whoever else you are to talk to. Jeff Zink, ladies and gentlemen. Dialing him in right now.
Hey, Ian, what's going on?
Jeff, nice to have you on the program. Thanks for answering the call. Let's get into what's happening in regards to your son on Capitol Hill right now. Now, Jeff, briefly for listeners, make a quick introduction if you would. Tell listeners who you are, and then we're going to get into what your son is dealing with right now.
Oh, absolutely, Ian. My name is Jeff Zink. I'm a congressional candidate in Arizona, and I am running in Congressional District 3 for that position. I'm a pastor. I'm a previous college professor, an NCAA basketball official, and also, I spent over 35 years in sports medicine taking care of everything from high school to professional athletes.
Jeff, you and your son were at the U.S. Capitol, Washington, D.C., January 6th. Seeing the events take place firsthand, what do you think prompted many to enter the Capitol that day, sir?
Well, thanks, Ian, for taking the time to learn the facts of Ryan's case. I would have to say, although many that day could have been considered as storming the Capitol, it was mostly a rather, peaceful protest, especially where we were at. We also had rally attendees being escorted inside the building, and local law enforcement and Capitol Police who moved barriers, opened doors, and before showing the entrance completely around the Capitol. Of course, there were others that day, the agitators, many of whom were captured on video committing crimes against people and property, including the video that was taken by Ryan of Hunter Emke breaking the windows of the Capitol building. Some people, in and out of our government suggest that these agitators were FBI informants, and to date, FBI Director Chris Wray has been unwilling to set the record straight on these issues. However, Ryan and I remained outside the building the entire day, never walking through the Capitol entrance opened by the officers. We did not have any personal interaction with the attendees who decided to follow behind the officers as they led the rally goers, into the Capitol that day. So none of that happened for us.
In 2021, you spoke at the Capitol, among others, where you stated the FBI cleared you of any connection but charged Ryan, your son. What prompted the FBI to believe Ryan was a suspect, Jeff?
Well, again, thanks for the question. And You have to ask yourself. I've had to ask myself the same question, for the past 2 years, including this week, as we're here in D.C. to support my son during his trial. And of course, I'm always here to give an eyewitness testimony about the events that day, since Ryan was with me all day. But, while the FBI seeks out my son Ryan, I suppose the simplest answer is that the FBI and DOJ targeted Ryan after they decided they could not pursue charges against me. Maybe because that I'm a congressional candidate in Arizona, and they didn't want to, have that kind of press. But, that's just a hypothesis. Although it makes sense considering that also I was never arrested, charged, or tried of any other attendees at the rally that day. It was peaceful. But some of the acquaintances of mine who live in Arizona, currently one of them's an elected official, not to mention, and this is what gets me, not to mention a Democrat leftist, Patricia Agrino, who stood outside the Capitol on January the 6th and loves to brag here in D.C. that she was at the Capitol counter-protesting that day, but did not get arrested. Instead, she was rewarded for her attendance by being elected as D.C. Commissioner in January of 2023. So, and I think we sent an article link, showing that part of it. But compare her counter-protesting claims to Ryan and I's. We were also outside the building that day, like Patricia Agrino, but we were not counter-protesting or protesting at all. I was there as a candidate and Ryan as my videographer, who stood near the others that I mentioned before, who were in the same general area. Yet the FBI never bothered to pursue a case against any of these people or against me. I wish more reporters would ask intelligent questions like you have, Ian. Maybe we could get down to the truth. But more importantly, I wish that I knew why the FBI sent 20 agents to Ryan's home in Texas for a surprise attack with their guns drawn and using flashbangs. I hope that we learn the answers this week, the reason the FBI and DOJ decided to harass, arrest, charge, and jail my son before the judge placed him under a gag order for the past 2 years. I am also as curious as to why the prosecutors are requesting a sentence of 21 years, knowing for certain that Ryan committed no crime and knowing many other defendants received sentences less than 8 years, with proof that they entered into the building and engaged in physical altercations. So the inconsistencies of this prosecution and persecution towards innocent Americans just boggle my mind. Knowing that there's no absolute rhyme or reason to the rule of law and determining the sentences based requested of the administration to observe or is actually more frustrating for me as a father, but I'm more infuriated as a citizen of the United States. As you know, for the past 2 years, since the FBI began tracking down a United States citizen, some Americans were tracked down like criminals simply by taking a flight to D.C. on January the 6th, 2021. But many of those may not have had attendance of that peaceful rally that day. But since Brian and I were in attendance for that moment, some people chose to follow those officers inside the Capitol, removed barricades, and allowed entrance. Ryan was near me with his video camera documenting these events, because he was a journalism student, and was simply there at my request as part of my campaign staff. But to document my Washington D.C. trip as an Arizona congressional candidate for the 2022 election and tasked with handling, the campaign social media, I just think that this is something that, one contrast, I believe, exemplifies the peace we witnessed, that day amongst thousands of rally goers, the waving of the American flag. We actually sang the national anthem. We held hands, taking selfies, as to compared to the so-called peaceful rallies after the death of George Floyd. As you know, many of the mainstream outlets reported mostly peaceful rallies, and of course, legitimate outlets like yourself, was actually reporting the truth. These peaceful rallies involved cities burning down, police departments taking over by armed citizens, innocent bystanders getting beaten in the streets and cities across the country. And maybe the worst of these is mostly peaceful rallies was watching our brave police officers having glass bottles and bricks thrown at them, their cars vandalized and flipped over, and the United States citizens assaulting them publicly. Unfortunately, most of those involved in those violent activities were completely unnoticed by the same FBI agents and the DOJ, who to date have spent more than $2.6 billion, which was allocated to the U.S. Attorney's Office as part of the support the J6 prosecutions. And hundreds of innocent Americans basically refer this to, or as, I would say, political persecution. So to answer your question, there's absolutely no reason that the FBI should have ever considered Ryan as a suspect, because he never entered the building, he never committed a crime, he never engaged in violence towards a person or property, as he was carrying a video equipment, and more importantly, he was by my side the entire day.
Jeff, as you say, there's video evidence of you and your son Ryan not stepping foot into the building. Why won't persecutors budge on this clearing?
Well, it's another great question, and many of the facts have been revealed to us only in the past week. One very interesting and troubling fact that was revealed last week happened after the prosecutor's office was forced by the judge to abruptly drop the charge, claiming that Ryan was inside the Capitol. For 2 years, the U.S. Attorney's Office falsely claimed to the court and to the judge that they were in possession of evidence provided Ryan entering into the building, alleging that he was involved in violent behavior inside the Capitol. After the judge realized the U.S. Attorney's Office had been lying about the proof and had, in fact, had no evidence to share during the trial, for the past 2 years, this attorney's office has used this lie to try to force and scare Ryan into accepting a plea deal that would require him to register for the rest of his life. Let me make it very clear, the rest of his life, a domestic terrorist. They use these same similar tactics on many other innocent people who were afraid to stand up with the truth against these dishonest tactics. Some might have said as a bad prosecutor, but I understand how their office works at the DOJ. The working prosecutor must get approval from their superiors who sign off on these charges and then bring these tactics and use them against the defendant. So this type of dishonesty and serious corruption is sure to reach the highest levels as the U.S. Attorney's Office and also the DOJ's office, particularly Merrick Garland, sorry. So Ryan was for 2 years to pay his first team almost $85,000 to mount a defense against false allegations that suggested he entered the building. Now that he has a second team of attorneys, they have spent a better part of a year preparing for a defense and argue against the same fake charges, literally wasting the time and Ryan's money to prepare for these outright lies. Luckily, Judge Boasberg discovered these games of the U.S. Attorney's Office that was playing and admonished them in the court on record and forced them to drop charges. The joke of all of this is that they only reduced the sentencing request by 1 year. Instead of 22 years, he's now facing 21. Although many of these cases are adjudicated, defendants are convicted of entering the building and engaging in physical altercations, receiving an average of only 8 years, and in some cases much less. So the 1 year reduction after they drop the main charge is obviously another tactic of the games that are continually being played with no rule of law required by the courts to be followed by the U.S. Attorney's Office and the DOJs, who are given the green light by these judges to do whatever they choose to our innocent Americans.
So, Merrick Garland's world, a American journalist, is now a domestic terrorist. Jeff, Ryan's facing 21 years in prison, and prosecutors were just changed last week. Why did they change now?
Well, that's difficult to know. The true reason prosecutors were swapped out, 7 days before Ryan's trial begins. I've got 3 different thoughts of that. The first one, or the first thought would be, is the prior prosecution or prosecutors were assigned to threaten, lie, and take whatever action they could to force a plea deal with Ryan. And when their illegalities did not work, they were relieved of duty of his case. So, the second one, maybe the theory would have been told as once that they were caught in a lie by the judge, claiming for 2 years that they had evidence. Ryan entered into the Capitol. The officers yanked him off the case because, or basically just right before the trial begins, so that our defense team did not have the opportunity to point out the blatant lies told by the court. And basically, they buried those DAs and brought in fresh team to cover up the fact of their illegal conduct and action towards my son's case. But, the third option that I think could be is that this is their closing team. When you buy a car in the first round, the salesman, they try to wear you down and get you to accept the deal for the dealership. But when you don't agree, the manager comes in, who's often the closer. All right, well, they step in and they start negotiating and use different tactics, usually more aggressive sales techniques to close you on a deal that ultimately benefits the dealership. So they win and the customer loses. So the bottom line here is that regardless of the lies that the U.S. Attorney and DOJ are willing to tell simply to win their case against J6 defendants, including my son, we know the truth of what happened. Ryan was with me that day. He was by my side, working for my campaign. At no time did he enter the Capitol, riot, physically fight with anyone else, vandalize property, or carry a weapon unless in 2023 the DOJ is now considered a camera with video capabilities to be a weapon. So they know he's innocent, just like we know that Ryan is innocent of all these charges.
Ladies and gentlemen, givesendgo.com/Ryan Zink. That's RyanZink. We're going to wind this down, Jeff, with one final question. We appreciate your time and certainly appreciate all you're doing for your son, of course, and for the country. But, Jeff, Ryan's trial is taking place this week. What are the attorneys doing to mount a defense?
Well, I tell you what, we really appreciate, Roger Root, John Pierce, Emily Lambert, and John Mosley. Those are all of his attorneys that are representing him. And as you can imagine, it's an uphill battle for brave attorneys willing to help innocent Americans like Ryan. They're often ostracized and attacked from their own professional communities, and they realize from working on many of these cases in the past 2 years that they must face the U.S. attorneys who have been given permission by their superiors and ultimately by Merrick Garland to do whatever is necessary to force innocent people into accepting these plea deals. And when that doesn't work, they have clearly been given the authority to lie if they must to ensure a conviction of crimes never committed, as in the fact that of Ryan's case recently revealed. Again, Ryan's legal teams are some of the few that are willing to take on the J6 defendants, and they are doing everything within their powers legally to combat the dirty tricks played by the DOJ and the U.S. Attorney hitmen. One line of defense is locating sentencing information on the defendants who received less than 10 years, even though it was proven through video footage. They entered the Capitol with officers allowing them to come inside and engage in physical altercations, or carried what was perceived a weapon. Yet for Ryan, who did none of these things, they're asking for 21 years only because he stood his ground, refused to buckle under the pressure that they inflicted. This week, the prosecutor is threatening a new domestic terrorist enhancement charge, obviously in retaliation after Ryan refused to accept their plea deal that would have forced him to register again as a domestic terrorist for the rest of his life. This isn't justice. This is tyranny. So I don't know where we go from here, but I know that this isn't it.
Ladies and gentlemen, Jeff Zink, congressional candidate for District 3, Arizona. Jeff, some quick final thoughts you may want to share with listeners. We look forward to bringing you back on, but in the meantime, perhaps share some final thoughts for listeners.
Well, thanks, Ian, for allowing me to share the truth about Ryan's case, for bringing out the facts about the decline of our justice system, and so many around the country who often hear only one side. So if your viewers would like to help Ryan out, they can visit givesendgo.com/Ryan Zink.
Excellent. Jeff, talk to you soon. Thanks so much for your time.
Thank you, Ian.
Yeah, frankly, it's disgusting what's happening to the United States of America, in my opinion. Now, I've heard various reports that was set up. Let's look at some of the facts here. Let's look at some of the facts. And I personally went to Donald Trump rallies. I voted for Ross Perot as the first U.S. president. I voted for Ross Perot. I liked him as an independent and said he'd be self-financed. That's what spoke to me as I think I was in high school. And I liked the independent thinker. I liked the person that was self-made. Always have. In 2015, prior to Donald Trump declaring actual candidacy for the presidency, I heard him speak in Doral in Miami, as he would say, if I ran for president, I'll run as an independent, self-financed. He later joined the GOP, and I simply suggested, what deal did he make? Now, there's people that suspect that Donald Trump is controlled opposition, and the deep state tyrannical reigns within the U.S. government certainly run deep enough that it could be that they are presenting a theatrical element to American politics that is so sophisticated and complex that it could be that Donald Trump is subservient to reigns of the deep state. If we pull back, we say, okay, well, he was just indicted and arrested, out on bail, a standing trial. This is a little too far. It's definitely a banana republic type political tactic. He's not a puppet of the deep state. I don't know. I don't know. What I do know is the research that I've done. And the research that I've done, I point you to my website, iantrottier.com. That's INTROTTIER.com. And there you can click on a link titled Central Bank, the Global Conspiracy. And there I lay it out, historically speaking, ladies and gentlemen, who the deep state is. And it's not American. Yes, Joe Biden happens to be the second Catholic president of the United States. The first Catholic president didn't happen for well over 150 years of its existence, and that was John F. Kennedy. Why purposely was there not a Catholic president serving in the United States Oval Office? Because the Roman Catholic Church was an enemy to the Protestants that created the foundation of this government and the Constitution. However, what I lay out in that article is that through the city of London, controlled essentially by Roman banks, the Rothschild, through the British East Indies Company, funded the American Revolution. That's my research. It may be incorrect. But you're talking about a world power that has been in power based off of a theology for centuries and centuries and centuries. Yes, the same struggle that Greece fought. Yet, supposedly in the United States of America, we retain democratic values. These are not of Roman origin, are they? Democratic values are from Athens. They are Athenian. That is correct. That is right. So is it possible that we, as freedom lovers, and I don't care if you are a Democrat or a Republican or a member of the Independent or the Green Party, I don't care what party you align yourself with, but if you align yourself with the values of the United States Constitution and you take pride in the fact that you are an American, then I speak to you. And you must consider that that enemy that the Mayflower set sail against is still alive and well. Central bank, a global communist conspiracy. Now, the word communism and centralism or centralization are intertwined because that's essentially what communism is. A top percent of government masks itself into thinking that a middle class can possibly, we're talking Adam Smith here, right, can possibly survive and be productive and grow and be healthy. Right? Economics and government, there's a great intertwining of the two. But folks, if you are able to control government, control state, because you're controlling the church, you're then combining church and state, which is what our beloved neighbors to the south, Mexico, have been fighting since they essentially kicked the Spanish out, but they didn't really either. Um, you want to create a divide of church and state, which is what the U.S. Constitution objectively obtained with its passing in 1783. May have that date wrong. So perhaps I'm getting too philosophical, but if you read the article, I base all of my argument on facts. So how does that relate to what Jeff Zink is dealing with his son? Well, let's again return to the presidency of Donald Trump. I mean, this is a man that attracted cities, basically, to his rallies. I think the average American, the middle-class American, loves their country. And this deep state is definitely so crafty that the younger generations, they've targeted the younger generations in the public education systems, in the universities, into thinking that somehow communism is a wonderful thing to adapt, even though it's never worked in any country on the planet. China, Russia, Germany, Venezuela, Cuba, I mean, the list goes on, doesn't it? But for some reason, America can be different, right? For some reason, America can be different. So here's the facts. A fairly benign virus was released through a Chinese laboratory, in large part funded by elements of the Rockefeller Foundation. I may be wrong in that. Fort Detrick seemingly developed the virus, shipped it off to China, and I have no reason to believe that didn't happen. And again, I'm not saying that America is an enemy. I'm saying that Fort Detrick, if you're looking at the city of London and you're looking at the banking institute, the British banking institute controlling the Federal Reserve, then you can see, ladies and gentlemen, why John F. Kennedy was assassinated. Makes sense to me, but hey, I might be wrong. It's unlikely, though. So Donald Trump, that wants to make America great again and return businesses and manufacturing away, whatnot to the homeland, was a great threat to this globalist cartel, right? Now, you're not going to take on the American military. You're simply not. Britain's not going to invade U.S. shores. The Chinese aren't going to do it. Russians aren't going to do it. And they're not going to form an alliance to do it. So the tactics of war become then stealth, like Brigadier General Robert Spalding, U.S. Air Force, said on my show about 2.5 years ago. There is a stealth enemy in the United States. This is what he said. Now, if you ask me, I'll tell you that stealth enemy is the economics, those that control the economics, because behind the veil of the Federal Reserve is where they reside. The Federal Reserve is not controlled by the American people or the public. That is a private banking institution, folks. It is not federal at all. It's only federal in name. People like J. Edgar Griffin have speaking about this for decades. But now more and more people are considering the fact that, that could be possible. Well, you know what? It was possible, and it was what Alexander Hamilton was dealing with Aaron Burr. Yes, over 200 years ago, New York. So, therefore, you have elements of social disruption. That it's plain sight. George Soros is funding those, BLM, Antifa, and as Jeff Zink just said, causing actual physical harm and disruption to American communities and cities, a la Portland, Seattle, Chicago. But somehow the polarization of politics has become so divided that was tolerable because of the cause. Well, could it be possible that what transpired January 6th of 2021? Excuse me, 2020? What was the year? Yeah, 2020. Or 2021. I'm confusing what the year was, but just keep it basic here. January 6th. People know what I'm talking about. 2021. Could it be possible that that was a black op? Entirely possible, folks. It's entirely possible. It's entirely possible. Well, I have no answer for that, but I know other folks have written extensively on it. And I've simply hosted Jeff Zink so that he can get the message out of his son. And ask yourself the question, what would you be doing if it was your son? On a parallel of what Donald Trump is going through, I don't believe there was a crime that was committed, at least not from what has been said on this program. Doesn't sound like it. But again, I don't know the laws. I'm not a lawyer. And perhaps the courts themselves have differing opinions. The parallel I draw is to what Donald Trump and his team have gone through just last month in Fulton County. The outlook is not bright in American politics. The country needs a unifier. The country needs someone who can truly get to the bottom of what the deep state is. And certainly the country needs someone who can get Americans that object to a concept of there being a deep state to understand that there certainly is a deep state. Can Robert F. Kennedy Jr. do that? I don't know. He's not been granted protection by the White House, even though he's a nephew of a former president, yet the current administration will not grant him protection. Why? My personal feeling is because he has written a book exposing the fraud that is Anthony Fauci and the people behind Anthony Fauci. And I will tell you that those are members of the Society of Jesus, otherwise known as the Jesuits. Because, ladies and gentlemen, that is a military order of the Vatican. No, they don't take up arms. They're much more intelligent than that. They're much more sophisticated than that. What they do is they attack your education system. And that starts by infiltrating your government by means of infiltrating its economy. And like I said, if you read the article that I've written, that I had posted on my website and on your news, Central Bank, a globalist conspiracy theory, my research directly pins the Vatican on being that infiltrator to the United States and its government. Read it. For another discussion of truth, ladies and gentlemen, I appreciate you listening. Pass the message forward. Support Jeff's son, Ryan. giftsendgo.com/Ryan Zink. That's RyanZink. I thank Ryan again. And until the next episode, let me mention this. Citizen Media News, go to it because I've done, they have uploaded a number of interviews that I've recently done. That includes an episode I did with Chris Sky, a Canadian freedom fighter. And when I say freedom fighter, that is standing up for your freedoms, freedom of speech, freedom of press, freedom against mandates on vaccines, on masks, freedom of religion. So until next time, folks, this is Ian Trottier for Discussion of Truth. Be awesome.